My name is Sophia Carter, and I'm 34 years old. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I chose to ignore, all the red flags I dismissed as paranoia. They say hindsight is 20/20, and God, isn't that the painful truth? I'm divorced now, have been for 3 years, but for most of my adult life I was Mrs. Gabriel Winters. We met in college, married at 25, and built what I thought was a solid foundation. No children. We kept postponing that conversation until the right time, which never came. Maybe that was a blessing in disguise. Growing up in Oakwood, a modest suburban neighborhood outside of Philadelphia, I was raised by a single mother who made sure I never forgot the sacrifices she made for me. Diana Carter, beauty queen turned realtor, reminded me constantly how she gave up her real life to raise me after my father abandoned us when I was just 2 years old. I could have been something, Sophia, she'd say, cocktail in hand, staring at old photographs of herself. I gave up everything for you. The guilt was a currency in our household, and I paid it faithfully. I cleaned the house while she worked late. I cooked dinner despite having homework. I became the adult while she chased her youth through an endless parade of boyfriends and business dinners. When I brought Gabriel home during our second year of college, my mother's eyes lit up in a way I'd never seen them light up for me. "He's going places," she whispered to me that night in the kitchen. "Don't mess this up." I didn't. I supported him through law school, working 2 jobs while finishing my teaching degree. I postponed my master's program when his career demanded we relocate. I became the perfect wife, hostess for his business dinners, cheerleader for his ambitions. "You're so lucky," my friends would say, and I believed them. Gabriel was handsome, successful, and chose me. What more could I want? For 9 years we lived what looked like a perfect life in our tasteful 3-bedroom house. I taught 2nd grade at the local elementary school. Gabriel made partner at his firm. We took vacations to Mexico and posted the photos on social media. We were that couple, the one others aspired to be. Until we weren't. It was a Tuesday in April when my life imploded. Nothing special about that day. I had graded papers during my lunch break, picked up dry cleaning after work, and stopped by the grocery store for ingredients to make Gabriel's favorite pasta. His text said he had a late meeting, so I took my time, even browsing through a bookstore and treating myself to a new novel. When I pulled into our driveway at 7:30 p.m., his car was already there. Strange, I thought, but maybe the meeting ended early. The house was silent when I entered, arms full of groceries. No TV noise, no shower running. "Gabriel," I called out, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. No answer. I found him upstairs in our bedroom, a half-packed suitcase on the bed. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice unnaturally high. "Are you going somewhere?" He didn't flinch, didn't seem surprised to see me. He just continued folding a dress shirt with methodical precision. "I can't do this anymore, Sophia." For words. For simple words that demolished 9 years together. "Do what? What are you talking about?" My hands were shaking as I stepped toward him. "This. Us." He gestured between us like we were a business transaction gone bad. "It's not working." I laughed. A strange hollow sound. "Is this a joke? We had breakfast together this morning. You kissed me goodbye. I've been trying to find the right time to tell you." His voice was eerily calm. "There's never a right time." "Tell me what? What happened?" My mind raced through possibilities. Was he sick? Did someone die? Was he having a breakdown? "I just don't love you anymore." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were cold, detached. "I haven't for a while." The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. People don't just stop loving someone overnight, Gabriel. This doesn't make sense. It wasn't overnight. He zipped up the suitcase. "And I need you to not make this harder than it already is." "Harder for who?" "For you." My shock was morphing into anger. "You're packing a suitcase in our bedroom, telling me you don't love me anymore. And I'm supposed to make it easy for you?" He sighed, checking his watch. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'll be staying at a hotel for now. You can keep the house until we sell it." "A lawyer? You've already..." My voice broke. "How long have you been planning this?" "Does it matter?" He picked up the suitcase, grabbed his laptop bag. Yes, it fucking matters." I was shouting now, tears streaming down my face. "We've been together for 9 years. You owe me more than this." He paused at the bedroom door. For a moment I thought he might say something real, something that would help me understand. Instead, he reached into his pocket and placed a folded piece of paper on the dresser. "I'm sorry, Sophia. You deserve better." And then he was gone. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the front door opening and closing, his car starting in the driveway. I stood frozen for several minutes before picking up the paper with trembling hands. It was a handwritten note, just a few lines. "Sophia, I can't continue living this life. It's not your fault. Some things just aren't meant to be forever. I'm sorry for the pain this will cause. Please don't try to contact me for a while. We both need space to process this change. Gabriel." That's it. 9 years reduced to 5 sentences. No real explanation. No accountability. Just over. I called him repeatedly that night. Texts, voicemails, emails. Nothing. It was like he had vanished from the earth, or at least from my corner of it. The next morning, I woke up thinking it might have been a nightmare. But the empty closet and the silence in the house confirmed my new reality. I called in sick to work, then sat on the kitchen floor and sobbed until I had no tears left. When I finally checked my phone, there was a text from my mother. "Heard about you and Gabriel. These things happen. Call me when you're ready to talk. Try not to harass him. Men hate desperate women." No, I'm sorry. No, are you okay? Just judgment and that subtle implication that somehow this was my fault. I didn't call her back. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal documents, whispered conversations from colleagues who stopped talking when I entered the room, and sleepless nights staring at the ceiling. Gabriel communicated only through his lawyer, a cold, efficient woman who looked at me with something like pity during our meetings. The divorce was surprisingly simple. We had a prenup, his family's insistence, no children, and Gabriel was being generous with the settlement. I could keep my car, some of our savings, and a small monthly alimony for 2 years to get back on my feet. "He wants you to be taken care of," his lawyer said, sliding the papers across the table. "If he wanted that, he would have stayed," I replied, but I signed the papers anyway. Fighting would only prolong the agony. My mother called periodically, offering her version of support. "You're still young, Sophia. Plenty of time to find someone else. Perhaps you work too much. Men need attention. Did you let yourself go? Be honest with me." Each conversation left me feeling worse than before, so eventually, I stopped answering her calls too. Summer came and went. I sold the house, couldn't bear to live there with all those memories, and found a small apartment closer to my school. I started seeing a therapist, joined a gym, reconnected with friends Gabriel had subtly pulled me away from over the years. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild my life without him. By fall, I could get through most days without crying. By winter, I had moments of genuine happiness. By spring, 1 year after he walked out, I went on my first date since the divorce. It was awkward and I wasn't ready, but it was a step. My mother, meanwhile, had become strangely distant. Our already strained relationship grew even more tenuous. She stopped her critical commentary on my life, stopped asking about Gabriel, stopped suggesting ways I could win him back. At the time, I was grateful for the reprieve, assuming she had finally accepted the situation. I couldn't have been more wrong. It was a warm day in June, almost 2 years post-divorce, when I received a thick cream-colored envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name and address in elegant calligraphy. Inside was an invitation, heavy cardstock with gold foil lettering, Diana Carter, and Gabriel Winters. Request the honor of your presence, as they joined their lives in marriage. I read it once, twice, 3 times. The words remained the same, but my brain refused to process their meaning. My mother and Gabriel getting married. The invitation slipped from my fingers, floating to the floor like a fallen leaf. I felt a strange numbness spreading through my body, a protective shock that kept the full impact at bay. This had to be a mistake, a cruel joke, some kind of elaborate prank. But deep down, things were clicking into place with sickening clarity. My mother's sudden disinterest in my love life, Gabriel's abrupt departure, the way he had always complimented her, brought her gifts, laughed a little too long at her jokes. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called my cousin Olivia, my mother's niece who had always been more like a sister to me. Please tell me you know about this, I said when she answered, not bothering with a greeting. Sophia. She sounded worried. Know about what? The invitation. To my mother's wedding. To Gabriel. Silence stretched between us for several seconds. Oh God, she finally whispered. You weren't supposed to get that. The numbness cracked, allowing the first wave of pain to crash through. What do you mean I wasn't supposed to get it? They're getting married and thought they could keep it from me. I told her this was a terrible idea, Olivia said. I told her you deserved to know from her, not like this. Know what? I was shouting now. How long has this been going on? More silence. Then softly. I think you should talk to your mom about this. Olivia, please. My voice broke. I need to know. She sighed heavily. They've been together for about 3 years, from what I understand. 3 years. The timeline hit me like a physical blow. He was still with me 3 years ago, I said, my voice hollow. I know. I could hear the pity in her voice, and it made me nauseous. I'm so sorry, Sophia. I hung up without another word and sank to the floor, the invitation lying next to me like a venomous creature. 3 years. They had been having an affair while Gabriel and I were still married. My mother and my husband. The betrayal was so immense, so grotesque, that my mind struggled to encompass it. Every memory shifted, took on new meaning. Every dinner at our house where my mother had touched his arm a second too long. Every time Gabriel had volunteered to pick her up from the airport. Every late meeting that coincided with her business trips. How had I been so blind? I don't know how long I sat there, piecing together the puzzle of their deception. The sky darkened outside my windows. My phone rang several times. Olivia probably worried about me, but I let it go to voicemail. Around midnight, I opened a bottle of wine and drank it straight from the bottle, something I'd never done before. The alcohol dulled the edges of my pain but sharpened my anger into something precise and dangerous. They thought they could do this to me. They thought I would just accept it, or better yet, never find out at all. They had no idea who I had become in the wake of their betrayal. The next morning, despite a pounding headache and a mouth that tasted like ashes, I called my mother. I had to hear her admit it. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice cautious. Sophia? This is a surprise. Is it? I kept my tone neutral, giving nothing away. I received an interesting piece of mail yesterday. A beat of silence. Oh, yes. An invitation. To your wedding. Another beat. Then, I see. That's it. I see. Not I'm sorry I'm marrying your ex-husband, or I've been sleeping with Gabriel for years. She sighed. A sound I'd heard my entire life whenever I disappointed her. I was going to tell you. When? After the honeymoon. Don't be dramatic, Sophia. This isn't about you. The casualness of her cruelty stole my breath. Not about me. You're marrying my ex-husband, Mother. The man I was with for 9 years. And you've been divorced for 3, she countered. People move on. With their exes, Mother? I nearly screamed into the phone. That's not moving on, that's... I couldn't even find words for what it was. Gabriel and I have a connection, she said. Her voice taking on that dreamy quality I remembered from her descriptions of various boyfriends throughout my childhood. We understand each other. When it's right, it's right. And when did you discover this magical connection? Before or after he left me? The silence that followed was answer enough. How could you do this to me? I asked, voice breaking despite my determination to stay strong. Oh, Sophia. She clicked her tongue. Not everything is about you. For once in my life, I've found someone who puts me first. Do you have any idea how that feels after a lifetime of putting everyone else's needs before my own? I laughed bitterly. When have you ever put anyone before yourself? Certainly not me. I sacrificed everything for you. There was the familiar refrain right on cue. My youth, my dreams, my freedom. All for you. And now I finally have a chance at happiness, and you want to ruin it with your jealousy. The accusation was so outrageous that it momentarily stunned me into silence. Jealousy. I finally managed. You think I'm jealous? It's written all over your voice, she said dismissively. You couldn't keep him, and you can't stand that I could. Something inside me snapped then. The last thread of loyalty or respect I had for this woman who had given me life but little else. You are delusional, I said, each word precise and cold. And you deserve each other. Two selfish, morally bankrupt people who care about no one but themselves. If that's how you feel, perhaps you shouldn't attend the wedding, she replied, equally cold. Oh, I'll be there, I promised. In fact, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I hung up before she could respond, my heart racing but my mind suddenly eerily calm. For the first time in 3 years I had purpose. I had direction. They wanted a wedding? Fine. I would give them an event no one would ever forget. The invitation indicated the ceremony would take place in 6 weeks at the Belmont Estate, an exclusive venue known for its picturesque gardens and historic mansion. I knew the place. Gabriel and I had considered it for our own wedding years ago but decided it was too extravagant. Apparently, money was no object for this union. I spent the next week in a state of focused fury researching, planning, making calls. I took a leave of absence from my teaching job, citing personal reasons. My principal, who knew about the divorce and had been supportive, didn't ask questions when she saw the look in my eyes. Take all the time you need, she said, squeezing my hand. We'll be here when you're ready to come back. I started by hiring a private investigator, something I should have done 3 years ago when Gabriel first left. Max Thornton came highly recommended and after hearing my story, took a special interest in my case. People like that think they're untouchable, he said during our initial meeting. It'll be my pleasure to prove them wrong. While Max dug into their lives, I focused on gathering allies. I reached out to old friends, family members who had sided with me during the divorce, colleagues who knew Gabriel from his firm. I didn't tell them my full plan. Just enough to ensure their presence at the wedding, and their support when I needed it. Olivia was my first and most important recruit. I can't believe she's actually going through with this, she said when we met for coffee. After everything she's done to you. Believe it, I replied, stirring my latte absently. The question is, are you with me or with her? She looked startled. With you, of course. Always. Even if what I'm planning might ruin her big day? Olivia studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Whatever you need. That woman raised me after my mom died, but what she's doing to you crosses every line. Tell me what I can do. Over the next month, pieces began falling into place. Max delivered weekly reports, each more damning than the last. Bank records showing transfers from Gabriel to my mother dating back 4 years. Hotel receipts. Email exchanges. Phone records showing hundreds of calls between them while we were still married. The affair hadn't started 3 years ago. It had been going on for at least 4 years, possibly longer. My entire marriage had been a lie. But the most shocking discovery came from an unexpected source. Janet, my mother's longtime assistant at her real estate office, called me out of the blue one evening. Sophia? It's Janet Murphy. Her voice was hushed, nervous. Do you have a minute? There's something you should know. I hadn't spoken to Janet since before the divorce, but I remembered her as kind, efficient, and utterly loyal to my mother. The fact that she was reaching out set alarm bells ringing. Of course, Janet. What's going on? I probably shouldn't be telling you this, she began, but I can't sleep at night knowing what I know. What is it? My pulse quickened. It's about your mother and Gabriel. She paused, took a deep breath. I found something while organizing Diana's files last week. Documents about a property in Vale. A luxury condo purchased 3 years ago. Okay. I wasn't sure why this warranted a secret phone call. The property was purchased jointly by Diana and Gabriel, with a substantial down payment that came from your joint account with Gabriel. I gripped the phone tighter. What? There's more, Janet continued. The timing of the purchase. It was 2 weeks before he left you. The implications hit me like a thunderbolt. Gabriel hadn't just been having an affair with my mother. They had been planning their future together, using our money to create their love nest, while I remained completely in the dark. Do you have copies of these documents? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Yes, Janet replied. And I'm willing to give them to you. Diana has been different these past few years. Colder. More calculating. The way she talks about you sometimes. She trailed off. It's not right what they're doing. We arranged to meet the next day. The file Janet handed over contained not just property records but handwritten notes between Gabriel and my mother, discussing their plans, their future, And occasionally me. She suspects nothing, Gabriel had written. Sometimes I almost feel bad for her. Don't, my mother had replied. She's always been naive. It's not your fault she can't see what's right in front of her. Reading their words, their casual dismissal of me, their contempt, something hardened inside me. Whatever lingering doubts I had about my plan evaporated. These people deserved everything that was coming to them. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received a call from Gabriel. His name on my phone screen after so long was jarring, like seeing a ghost. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hello, Sophia. His voice was exactly as I remembered, deep, confident, with that slight rasp I used to find so attractive. Now it made my skin crawl. We need to talk. Do we? I kept my tone light, neutral. After 3 years of silence? Your mother said you know about the wedding. He sounded uncomfortable. Good. Yes, I got the invitation. Lovely paper stock. Very elegant. Look, I know this must be difficult for you. I almost laughed at the understatement. Actually, Gabriel, I'm fine. Better than fine. You are. He sounded surprised, maybe even a little disappointed. Had he been expecting tears? Begging? Absolutely. In fact, I'm looking forward to the wedding. It's not every day your mother marries your ex-husband. Should make for an interesting story at parties. Silence stretched between us. I could almost hear his brain working, trying to figure out if I was being sincere. That's mature of you, he finally said. I wasn't sure how you'd react. Water under the bridge, I assured him. We've all moved on, right? Right. He sounded relieved. Too relieved. So we'll see you there? Wouldn't miss it for the world. After hanging up, I smiled to myself. Gabriel always was easy to manipulate when you told him what he wanted to hear. It was one of the first things I learned about him, and apparently one of the last lessons I would teach him. The final week before the wedding passed in a blur of preparation. I had my hair colored. Not my usual subtle highlights, but a rich, striking auburn that made my green eyes pop. I invested in a professional makeup tutorial, learning techniques to accentuate my features. I bought a dress, not black, too cliché for a scorned woman, but a deep emerald silk that hugged every curve and made a statement without trying too hard. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my apartment, reviewing everything I had gathered, everything I had learned. The evidence was overwhelming, the plan set in motion. There would be no turning back once I walked into that venue. Part of me, a small weak part, wondered if I should just let it go. Walk away. Live my life without giving them the satisfaction of knowing they had hurt me so deeply. But then I remembered Gabriel's note. Asterisk. Some things just aren't meant to be forever. Asterisk. I remembered my mother's words. Asterisk. This isn't about you. Asterisk. They had shattered my life, my trust, my sense of self. And they had done it without remorse or regard for the damage they were causing. They deserved consequences. I went to bed early, slept dreamlessly, and woke with the sunrise, calm and focused. Today was the day everything would change. As I dressed carefully, applied my makeup with precision, and packed my bag with everything I would need, I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the naive schoolteacher who had built her life around making others happy. In her place stood someone stronger, sharper, unwilling to be anyone's victim. Ready or not, I whispered to my reflection, here I come. The Belmont estate was even more impressive than I remembered from brochures. Sprawling gardens led to a grand manor house, its stone facade gleaming in the June sunshine. Cars lined the circular driveway, luxury vehicles belonging to the upper crust of Philadelphia society my mother had always aspired to join. I parked my modest sedan at the far end of the lot and checked my appearance one last time in the rearview mirror. Perfect. I looked confident, beautiful, unaffected. Exactly the opposite of what they would expect. As I walked toward the entrance, a few heads turned. I spotted familiar faces, old family friends, some of Gabriel's colleagues, distant relatives. Their expressions ranged from shock to pity to curiosity. I smiled warmly at each one, enjoying their confusion. The usher at the door hesitated when I gave my name. Miss Carter. I'm not sure. It's fine, David, came Olivia's voice as she appeared beside him. She's with me. Olivia looked stunning in a pale blue dress, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo. She squeezed my hand as she led me into the venue. "You look amazing," she whispered. "Are you sure about this?" I nodded. More sure than I've been about anything in my life. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m. in the garden pavilion. It was now 2:30, and guests were mingling in the adjoining cocktail area. I spotted Gabriel's parents across the room. They had always been kind to me, if somewhat distant. They noticed me at the same moment, their eyes widening in twin expressions of dismay. Eleanor Winters, Gabriel's mother, recovered first and made her way toward me, her husband trailing reluctantly behind. "Sophia," she said, her voice tight. "This is unexpected, is it?" I smiled pleasantly. "I was invited." "Were you?" She seemed genuinely surprised. "Gabriel told us you and Diana had discussed this and you weren't comfortable attending." Of course they had lied about that too. Well, here I am. I wouldn't dream of missing my mother's special day. Eleanor looked like she wanted to say more but thought better of it. Her husband, James, merely nodded stiffly before steering her away. I accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter and sipped it slowly, taking in the scene. The decorations were lavish, white roses and orchids everywhere, crystal accents catching the light, champagne flowing freely. No expense spared for this union built on lies and betrayal. As guests began making their way to the garden pavilion for the ceremony, I lingered behind, waiting. I needed my entrance to be noticed but not so disruptive as to be stopped before I could execute my plan. I spotted Max across the room, disguised as a photographer's assistant. He gave me a subtle nod. Everything was in place. Taking a deep breath, I followed the last group of guests outside. The garden pavilion was spectacular. A glass structure set among flowering shrubs and fountains. Rows of white chairs faced a floral archway where a distinguished-looking officiant stood waiting. Gabriel was already in position beside him, handsome in a tailored black tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled. He saw me as I entered and froze momentarily before quickly composing himself. I gave him a small wave and took a seat in the back row, next to an elderly couple I didn't recognize. The string quartet began playing the traditional wedding march, and everyone stood as my mother appeared at the far end of the aisle. I had to admit she looked beautiful. At 56, Diana Carter was still striking, tall, slim, with the same green eyes as mine, though hers were calculating where mine had once been trusting. Her dress was ivory satin, tastefully sexy without being inappropriate for a woman her age. Her smile was radiant as she began her walk toward Gabriel. I remained seated while everyone else stood, earning a few puzzled glances from nearby guests. I didn't care. I wouldn't stand to honor this farce of a union. The ceremony proceeded with all the traditional elements. Flowery words about love and commitment, promises to cherish and honor. The irony was almost too much to bear. When the officiant reached the pivotal moment, if anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. A hush fell over the gathering. This was it. The moment everything changed. I stood slowly, deliberately. Every head turned. Gabriel's face drained of color. My mother's smile froze, then faltered. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice clear and steady. The officiant looked startled. "Miss, unless you have legal grounds." "Oh, I do," I assured him, stepping into the aisle. "In fact, I have quite a lot to say about these two people and their unique relationship." I could feel the collective intake of breath from the audience. Some guests looked horrified, others intrigued. Olivia gave me a subtle thumbs up from her seat near the front. "Sophia," my mother hissed, "sit down this instant." I smiled pleasantly. "I don't think I will." I took another step forward, addressing the guests rather than the couple. "For those who don't know me, I'm Sophia Carter, Diana's daughter and, interestingly enough, Gabriel's ex-wife." A wave of murmurs swept through the audience. Clearly, not everyone had been informed of this particular detail. "Sophia, please," Gabriel said, his voice strained. "Don't do this." "Don't do what, Gabriel? Tell the truth? Isn't that what weddings are about? Honesty? Commitment? Loyalty?" I reached into my purse and removed a small USB drive, holding it up. "Speaking of honesty, I have something I'd like to share with everyone." Max stepped forward with his laptop and a small projector he'd set up earlier, disguised as part of the photography equipment. Within seconds, images appeared on the white tent wall behind the altar: emails, bank records, hotel receipts. These are records of an affair that began over 4 years ago, I announced, my voice steady despite the rapid beating of my heart. While I was still married to Gabriel. While my mother was still telling me she loved me and wanted the best for me. The crowd gasped. My mother lunged toward me, but one of the groomsmen, a friend of Gabriel's I'd never particularly liked, held her back, whispering something in her ear. That's right, I continued. While I was working 2 jobs to support Gabriel through law school, while I was postponing my own dreams to be the perfect wife, my husband was sleeping with my mother. Gabriel stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Sophia, that's enough. You're making a scene. A scene. I laughed, the sound echoing in the suddenly silent pavilion. Oh, Gabriel, this isn't a scene. This is just the prologue. I nodded to Max, who clicked to the next slide. A property deed appeared on screen. This is a luxury condo in Vale, purchased jointly by the happy couple 3 years ago. What's interesting is the down payment, $120,000 from an account that was legally half mine at the time. Money we had saved together for our future. More murmurs from the audience. Gabriel's father stood up abruptly, his face contorted with anger, directed not at me but at his son. And here's my personal favorite, I said as Max advanced to the next slide, displaying the handwritten notes I'd obtained from Janet. These charming exchanges between the lovebirds, discussing how oblivious I was, how naive, how I suspected nothing. My mother had gone pale, her perfectly applied makeup now a stark contrast to her bloodless face. This is slander, she managed, her voice shaking. I'll sue you for this. Truth is an absolute defense against slander, Mother. You taught me that, remember? When Mrs. Patterson threatened to sue you for telling everyone her husband was having an affair with his secretary. I smiled coldly. You should have taken your own advice and kept your hands off my husband. Gabriel stepped toward me, his expression a mixture of anger and desperation. Sophia, let's talk about this privately. Please. You've made your point. Have I? I tilted my head, studying him. I don't think I have. Not quite yet. I turned back to the stunned audience. You know, when Gabriel left me, I blamed myself. I thought I'd failed somehow, wasn't pretty enough, successful enough, interesting enough. I spent months in therapy trying to understand what went wrong. My voice cracked slightly, and I took a breath to steady myself. And all along, the problem wasn't me. It was him. It was her. 2 people who were supposed to love me, conspiring behind my back, laughing at my expense. The officiant, who had been watching this unfold with increasing discomfort, finally spoke up. Perhaps we should postpone the ceremony. Oh no, I cut in. By all means continue. If these 2 want to build a marriage on a foundation of lies and betrayal, they should go right ahead. I just wanted everyone here to know exactly what kind of people they're celebrating today. I locked eyes with Gabriel, a man who could cheat on his wife with her own mother. Then I turned to Diana, and a woman who could seduce her daughter's husband and still have the audacity to wear white on her wedding day. The pavilion erupted with shocked whispers and exclamations. Someone near the back stood up and walked out. Then another. And another. My mother clutched Gabriel's arm, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. You've always been jealous of me, she spat. Always wanting what I have. I laughed, genuinely amused by the absurdity of her accusation. What you have? You mean my leftovers? The man I lived with for 9 years? The man I supported through law school? The man I nursed through pneumonia and celebrated with when he made partner? I shook my head, suddenly feeling a wave of pity for both of them. You know what? You 2 deserve each other. A cheating husband and a backstabbing mother, match made in heaven. I turned to leave, my piece said, my evidence presented. But Gabriel's voice stopped me. It wasn't like that, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Diana and we fell in love. We didn't mean for it to happen. I turned back slowly. Didn't mean for it to happen? For 4 years. With secret properties and joint bank accounts? That's not an accident, Gabriel. That's a conspiracy. We were going to tell you, my mother interjected, finding her voice again. We just couldn't find the right time. The right time would have been before you slept with my husband. I replied evenly. Or perhaps before you spent my money on your love nest. Or maybe, just maybe, before you sent me a wedding invitation as if this was somehow normal. I looked around the pavilion, at the shocked faces of friends and family, at the expensive flowers and champagne, at the life these two had planned together on the ruins of mine. Enjoy your wedding, I said softly, reaching into my purse once more. Oh, and before I forget, I brought you a gift. I pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to the officiant, who took it reflexively. What's this? Gabriel demanded, reaching for the envelope. Court documents, I replied as I walked away. I'm suing both of you for the money that was stolen from our joint account. My lawyer will be in touch. I reached the end of the aisle and turned back one last time, addressing the remaining guests with a sweet smile. The reception is at 6, I believe. I hear the crab cakes are excellent. And with that, I walked out of the pavilion, through the grand entrance of the Belmont estate, and into the bright afternoon sunshine, feeling lighter than I had in years. The aftermath was spectacular. From Olivia, who stayed to witness the chaos, I learned that the ceremony was indeed postponed, indefinitely as it turned out. Most guests left immediately after my departure, unwilling to celebrate a union built on such deception. Gabriel's parents, whom I had always found a bit cold but fundamentally decent, publicly disowned him on the spot. No son of mine treats a woman that way, James Winters had apparently declared before storming out with his wife. My mother and Gabriel had retreated to a private room, emerging an hour later to find an almost empty venue and thousands of dollars in non-refundable catering going to waste. The story spread quickly throughout our social circle and beyond. Someone had recorded my entire speech on their phone, bless them, and while it never went viral in the broader sense, it circulated widely enough among Philadelphia's upper middle class that both my mother's real estate business and Gabriel's position at his law firm began to suffer. Janet called me the following Monday. Diana didn't come into the office today, she reported with barely concealed satisfaction. 3 clients have already called to cancel their listings with her. I hadn't planned on professional consequences for either of them, but I couldn't pretend to be sorry. Actions should have consequences. For too long they had acted with impunity, assuming their privilege and positions would shield them from judgment. Gabriel tried to call me several times in the week following the wedding debacle. I let each call go to voicemail. His messages evolved from angry, "You had no right to humiliate us like that," to pleading, "Please Sophia, can we talk about this?" to resigned, "I guess I deserved that." The last one gave me pause. Not because I was considering forgiving him, but because it was the first acknowledgement that he had done something wrong. My lawsuit proceeded smoothly. The evidence was overwhelming, and neither Gabriel nor my mother had a legal leg to stand on regarding the misappropriated funds. After a brief but intense legal battle, they settled, returning not just the original sum but interest, and a significant additional amount for emotional distress. My attorney, a shark-like woman named Veronica who had initially taken my case pro bono after hearing my story, was jubilant. "You know," she said as we celebrated over drinks after the settlement was finalized, "I've been practicing family law for 20 years, and I've never seen someone get such satisfying revenge while staying completely within the bounds of the law. I'm impressed." I smiled, clinking my glass against hers. "Justice isn't the same as revenge, though, is it? In cases like this?" She raised an eyebrow. "It's the best kind of revenge." 6 months after the wedding, that wasn't. I was having dinner with Olivia when she mentioned she'd run into my mother at a grocery store. "She looks terrible," Olivia reported, picking at her salad. "She's lost weight, her business is struggling, and apparently Gabriel moved out a month ago." I absorbed this information with surprising neutrality. "Where did he go?" "Chicago, from what I heard. Took a position at another firm after his partnership here was quietly dissolved." I nodded, feeling an unexpected sense of closure. They had imploded without me having to lift another finger. "Are you okay?" Olivia asked, studying my face. "Finding out about them hurt you deeply. It's okay if you're still processing." I considered her question seriously. Was I okay? The betrayal had cut deep, shattered my trust not just in those 2 specific people but in my own judgment. I had been blind to their deception for years, and that was a difficult truth to reconcile. But sitting there with Olivia, I realized that yes, I was okay. Better than okay. I'm good, I said finally. Really good, actually. And I was. With the settlement money, I had paid off the remainder of my student loans, taken a sabbatical from teaching, and enrolled in a master's program I'd been postponing for years. I had reconnected with old friends, made new ones, even gone on a few promising dates with a literature professor I'd met in one of my classes. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my narrative. No longer was I the naive, betrayed ex-wife or the abandoned daughter. I was a woman who had faced unimaginable betrayal, and not only survived but emerged stronger, more self-assured, unwilling to accept disrespect or dishonesty from anyone. Do you ever think about reaching out to Diana? Olivia asked hesitantly. Not to reconcile necessarily, but for closure? I shook my head. The Diana I thought I knew, the mother who, despite her many flaws, I believed loved me in her own way, never existed. The real Diana showed herself when she chose Gabriel over her own daughter, when she mocked me in those notes, when she called me jealous at her wedding. I took a sip of wine. I have closure. The rest is up to her. Olivia nodded, understanding. And Gabriel? Gabriel made his choices, I said simply. Now he's living with the consequences. We finished dinner talking about Olivia's new promotion, her plans to buy a house, her on-again off-again relationship with a charming but commitment-phobic chef. Normal things. Life things. As we walked to our cars afterward, Olivia hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, you know, she said. Not just for what you did at the wedding, though that was epic, but for how you've rebuilt yourself afterward. I hugged her back, grateful for her unwavering support through everything. Thanks for standing by me. Always, she promised. Family is family, the real kind, not the Diana kind. I laughed, and it felt good, clean and genuine, unburdened by the weight I'd carried for so long. A year after the wedding incident, I received a letter, an actual handwritten letter, from Gabriel. I almost threw it away unopened but decided that whatever he had to say, I was strong enough to hear it. Sophia. I've written this letter a dozen times in my head over the past year. Nothing seems adequate, and I know there's nothing I can say to undo the hurt I caused you. What happened between Diana and me was inexcusable. There's no justification for betraying someone the way we betrayed you. At the time I told myself 1,000 lies to make it seem okay, but the truth is simple. I was selfish and weak. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I don't deserve it, and I know it's not mine to ask for. I'm writing because I want you to know that you were right about everything you said that day at the wedding. The humiliation was warranted. The lawsuit was justified. The consequences were earned. Diana and I were toxic together. What we mistook for passion was just the thrill of secrecy and forbidden connection. Once that was gone, once we had to face each other in the harsh light of public disapproval, there was nothing left but two deeply flawed people who had hurt someone they should have protected. I'm starting over in Chicago. New firm, new apartment, therapy twice a week. I'm trying to understand why I was capable of such cruelty to someone who showed me nothing but kindness and support for 9 years. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. I hope you know that what happened was never, ever your fault. Gabriel. I read the letter twice, then set it aside. I felt no urge to respond, no need to acknowledge his belated epiphany. His journey toward becoming a better person was his own to walk, separate from me and my life. As for my mother, I heard through Olivia that she had eventually sold her business and moved to Florida. A fresh start for her as well, I supposed. She never reached out directly, and I was grateful for that. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. 2 years after what came to be known in our social circle as the wedding incident, I found myself back at the Belmont estate, this time as a guest at a colleague's wedding. I had hesitated when I received the invitation, unsure if the venue would trigger painful memories. But as I walked through the gardens that summer afternoon, I felt nothing but a detached appreciation for the beauty of the place. The pavilion where I had exposed my mother and Gabriel's betrayal was decorated differently now, blue and silver instead of white and gold, but the structure was the same. You okay? Asked Kevin, the literature professor who was now officially my boyfriend, his hand warm and steady on the small of my back. I smiled up at him, at his kind eyes and the genuine concern in them. I'm perfect, actually. And I was. Standing there in the sunshine, surrounded by the scent of roses and the sound of cheerful conversation, I realized I had finally truly moved on. During the ceremony, when the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, I caught several guests glancing in my direction, some smiling nervously, others looking worried. My reputation had apparently preceded me. I just smiled serenely and remained seated, content to be a witness rather than a disruptor this time. At the reception, I found myself chatting with the bride's mother, a lovely woman in her 60s with a quick laugh and sharp intelligence. "This is your first time here?" she asked as we sipped champagne at a corner table. "No," I admitted. "I was here for another wedding a couple of years ago." Recognition dawned in her eyes. "Wait, are you?" I nodded, expecting the usual mixture of fascination and discomfort that typically followed when someone made the connection. Instead, she reached over and squeezed my hand. "Good for you," she said firmly. "My first husband left me for my best friend 30 years ago. I often wish I'd had your courage to call them out publicly instead of crying quietly while they rode off into the sunset." I was touched by her candor, her solidarity. It wasn't about courage so much as refusing to be erased from my own story, I explained. They wanted to pretend what they did was normal, accidental, justifiable. I couldn't let that stand. She raised her glass in a toast. "To writing our own endings." I clinked my glass against hers. "To better beginnings." Later, as Kevin and I danced under the stars, his arms solid and secure around me, I reflected on how far I'd come from that devastating Tuesday in April, when Gabriel had walked out of my life with a flimsy note and a suitcase. The pain had been transformative, not just the pain of his leaving, but the deeper wound of discovering the dual betrayal by the two people who should have loved me most. I had been broken open by their deception, forced to reconstruct myself from the ground up. What emerged from those broken pieces was someone stronger, more discerning, unwilling to settle for less than complete honesty and respect. Someone who understood her own worth and refused to diminish herself to make others comfortable. Kevin spun me gently, then pulled me close again. "Penny, for your thoughts," he murmured against my hair. I smiled, coming back to the present moment. "Just thinking about paths not taken and bullets dodged." He chuckled. "Poetic as always, Professor Carter." Professor Carter. I liked the sound of that. My new title since completing my master's and accepting a full-time position at the university, teaching literature to eager undergraduates. A career I loved. One that I had put on hold during my marriage to support Gabriel's ambitions. "You're doing that thing again," Kevin observed, his voice fond. "What thing?" "That little smile you get when you're mentally checking items off your victory list." I laughed. He knew me well already, this man who had entered my life with no expectations, who listened more than he spoke, who never made me feel like I needed to be less to make him feel like more. "Guilty as charged," I admitted. "Sometimes I just need to remind myself how much has changed." He nodded, understanding without needing every detail explained. That was one of the things I cherished most about our relationship. The space he gave me to process my past at my own pace, neither pushing for revelations nor shying away when they came. "For what it's worth," he said as the song ended, "I think you're remarkable." I stood on tiptoe and kissed him softly. "For what it's worth, I think we're pretty good together." Walking back to our table, hand in hand, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in one of the pavilion's glass walls. A confident woman in a beautiful dress, smiling up at a man who smiled right back, both of them moving forward, together but independent. It wasn't the life I had planned. It wasn't the future I had once envisioned with Gabriel. It was better, more authentic, more earned, more mine. My mother and Gabriel had thought they could discard me, replace me, erase me from my own narrative. Instead, they had inadvertently set me free to write a new story, one where I was the hero, not the victim. As Kevin pulled out my chair and we rejoined our friends at the table, laughter bubbling around us like the champagne in our glasses, I silently thanked them for that unintended gift, and then, with the ease of someone who has truly moved on, I let thoughts of them fade away entirely, focusing instead on the joy of the present moment and the promise of all the moments yet to come. In the end, the best revenge wasn't the public humiliation at their wedding, or even the successful lawsuit. It was this: living well, loving deeply, and refusing to let their betrayal define me. It was reclaiming my power and using it not for retribution but for creation, building a life so full and rich that what they had done became just a chapter in my story, not the whole book. And as stories go, I had to admit, mine was just getting to the good part.